Look, I'm just going to say it up front. The day the galaxy discovered humans weren't the harmless space janitors everyone thought we were. That was entirely not my fault. My name is Reece Dalton, and I haul cargo between stations for a living. Exciting stuff. Really. Nothing says living the dream like transporting 17 tons of synthetic fertilizer from point A to point B, while listening to the same 6 radio stations the universe decided were acceptable for public broadcast. But every 5 years, the Galactic Council in their infinite wisdom requires all sentient beings to submit to a biological census. You know, make sure you're still the species you claim to be, haven't picked up any fun mutations, that sort of thing. It's bureaucracy. Bureaucracy apparently transcends planetary origin. So there I was, standing in the census office of Station Meridian 7, surrounded by approximately 40 different species, all of us waiting to get scanned so we could go back to our boring lives. The technician running my scan was a Quellan named Crix. 4 arms, purple skin, 3 eyes positioned in a triangle formation on his face. He looked about as thrilled to be there as I was. "Step into the scanner, please," Crix said, not even looking up from his datapad. His voice had that particular tone of someone who'd said the same sentence roughly 8,000 times that week. I stepped into what looked like a vertical tanning bed from hell. Blue light washed over me from every direction. "This'll just take a moment," Crix droned. "The scanner catalogs your genetic markers, compares them against your registered species profile, and confirms you are who you say you are. Standard procedure. Try not to move." I didn't move. I'm great at following simple instructions. That's when things went sideways. The machine made a sound. Not a good sound. Not a beep or a pleasant chime. No. This was the digital equivalent of someone choking on their coffee. Then it made another sound, like a computer having an existential crisis. Crix looked up. All 3 of his eyes widened. "That's not possible," he muttered. "What's not possible?" I asked, still standing in the machine because nobody told me I could leave. Crix's 4 hands started flying across his console, pulling up screens, dismissing others, pulling up more screens. His skin was shifting from purple to a pale lavender, which I'd learned meant Quellans were either scared or about to molt. I really hoped it was the molting thing. "The scanner is detecting genetic markers that shouldn't exist," he said, his voice climbing an octave. "Multiple markers. Impossible markers." "I'm going to need you to be more specific," I said, "because I've had a long day, and I'd really like to go eat something deep-fried." Crix finally looked at me. Really looked at me. Like I'd just grown a second head. "Your genetic code contains active DNA sequences from extinct predator species," he said slowly. "Canis lupus, Ursus arctos, Panthera leo, Panthera tigris. The machine is reading you as a genetic repository for Earth's extinct apex predators." I blinked. "You mean wolves and bears and stuff?" "Wolves, bears and stuff," Crix repeated, his voice going faint. "She says wolves, bears and stuff." "Yeah, I mean, those animals have been extinct for like 3 million years. What's the big deal?" Crix looked at me like I just asked why breathing was important. "The big deal," he said very carefully, "is that you appear to be carrying active genetic material from multiple apex predator species that your planet genocided into extinction. The big deal is that Earth's census records list humanity as Category 3 dormant predators. Emphasis on dormant, as in no longer genetically active, as in safe. I mean, I'm pretty safe," I offered. "I've never attacked anyone who didn't deserve it." Crix made a sound that his translator didn't even attempt to convert into standard. Then he hit a button on his console. Alarms started blaring. "Oh, come on," I said. "Security arrived in under 30 seconds. 6 guards, all of them built like refrigerators with anger management issues." "Ma'am, you need to come with us," the lead guard said. He was some kind of insectoid species with mandibles that clicked when he talked. For what? Having grandparents? For potential biological misrepresentation and being a possible threat to station security. I looked at Crix. "You called security because I have old DNA?" "I called security," Crix said, still looking pale, "because according to this scanner, you're not a dormant predator. You're an active one. And that means every human census record for the last 200 years has been wrong." The security guard's mandibles clicked rapidly. His translator caught up a moment later. "You're coming with us, now." And that's how I ended up in an interrogation room, facing down the galaxy's worst day ever, all because some machine couldn't tell the difference between genetic memory and an actual threat. Spoiler alert. It was about to get so much worse. The interrogation room was exactly what you'd expect. Gray walls, one table, two chairs, and a two-way mirror that I'm pretty sure every species in the galaxy had agreed was standard intimidation design. Commander Vel sat across from me. He was the insectoid from before, and his translator box kept clicking and whirring every time his mandibles moved. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Vel said, his compound eyes reflecting the harsh overhead light. "You were unaware that your species carries active genetic markers from extinct predator species?" "I mean, nobody tells you this stuff at school," I said. "We learned about evolution and extinction events and whatever, but nobody said, 'Hey, by the way, your DNA is basically a predator graveyard.'" Vel's antennae twitched. "Your species is classified as Category 3 dormant predators. Do you understand what that means?" "Not really, no." He pulled up a holographic display between us. It showed a list of species classifications. "Category 1, Vel began, active predators, species that currently hunt and consume other sentient beings. They are barred from council membership and restricted to their home systems. Category 2, active predators non-sentient consumption, species that hunt but only non-sentient prey. They are granted limited council access and require monitoring. Category 3, dormant predators, species that evolved from predators but no longer exhibit active hunting behaviors." "Okay, so we're Category 3. What's the problem?" "The problem," Vel said, his mandibles clicking rapidly, "is that Category 3 species are not supposed to carry active genetic material from their predator ancestors. The genetic markers are supposed to be dormant, inactive, evolutionary leftovers. But mine aren't. According to the scanner, no. Your DNA contains active sequences from multiple apex predator species. This suggests that humans have not in fact evolved past their predatory nature. They have simply been hiding it." I stared at him. "That's ridiculous. Humans don't hunt other sentient species. We're like, aggressively friendly. Sometimes inappropriately friendly." "Then explain the genetic markers." "I don't know. Evolution is weird. Maybe we just didn't lose that DNA. I'm a cargo hauler, not a geneticist." Before Vel could respond, the door burst open. A creature that looked like a centaur, had a baby with a spider, scuttled into the room at alarming speed. 6 legs, 4 arms, and a head that was slightly too large for its body. "Commander Vel, you cannot interrogate her like a criminal," the creature shouted. "This is a scientific discovery of unprecedented magnitude." "Professor Tame," Vel said, his tone suggesting this was not the first time the professor had burst into an interrogation. "This is a security matter." "This is a biological marvel," Tame corrected, scuttling up to me with wide eyes. "Do you have any idea what you represent? You're a living connection to Earth's predator extinction event. The genetic data we could gather from you could rewrite everything we know about human evolution." "I'd really rather you didn't gather anything from me," I said. Tem ignored this completely. "Tell me, do you experience any unusual urges? Heightened aggression? Desire to chase moving objects? I mean, I get angry at slow walkers in station corridors, but I don't think that's genetic." "Fascinating." Tem pulled out a datapad and started typing furiously. "Commander, I insist this human be released into my custody for study. Think of what we could learn." "She's a potential security threat," Vel said flatly. "She's a scientific miracle." They argued over me like I wasn't even there, which honestly was pretty on brand for academics and security personnel across the universe. That's when my personal communicator started buzzing. Apparently word had already spread across the station's network because I had approximately 200 messages, most of them from species I'd never even heard of. One message stood out. It was from the Herbivore Alliance, a political group representing prey species. It read, "Please stay away from our residential sectors. We mean no offense." Another, from the Predator Coalition. "We demand genetic verification. Humans cannot possibly carry true predator lineage." "Oh, this is just great," I muttered. Vel's antennae perked up. What? The entire station knows. Look at this. I showed him my communicator. Vel's mandibles went very still. Then he said something that his translator decided was better left untranslated. Professor Tame clapped two of his four hands together. Wonderful. This will make data collection so much easier. Everyone will want to contribute observations. Professor, I said slowly, you realize this is bad, right? Like, very bad? Bad? This is revolutionary. The door opened again. This time a floating blob of what looked like sentient jelly drifted in, 7 eye stalks waving in different directions. Reece Dalton? The blob asked, all 7 eyes focusing on me at once. Unfortunately, yes. Zeta Prime Galactic News Network. I'd like to ask you a few questions about being a secret apex predator. I'm not a secret apex predator. That sounds exactly like what a secret apex predator would say, Zeta Prime replied, and I could hear the smile in its voice, even though it didn't have a mouth. Commander Vel stood up. Everyone out. Now. But it was too late. The story was out. Humanity's secret apparently was no longer secret, and I was standing at ground zero of the galaxy's worst identity crisis. Turns out, nothing spreads faster than panic. Not even gossip about who's sleeping with whom in the cargo bay, which previously held the station record for information velocity. Within 6 hours, the entire station knew that the human census data might be catastrophically wrong. Within 12 hours, 3 different species had filed formal complaints with station management. Within 18 hours, I couldn't walk down a corridor without causing some kind of scene. The herbivore species scattered whenever they saw me coming. Literally scattered. I watched a group of Felnari, these rabbit-like creatures with 6 ears, actually climb over each other to get away from me when I turned a corner. One of them dropped their datapad in the panic and I tried to return it, which only made them run faster. The predator species had the opposite reaction. They were insulted. I got cornered by a creche hunter in the commissary. The creche looked like bipedal alligators with better posture and significantly worse attitudes. You? The creche hissed, circling me like I was auditioning for a nature documentary. You are supposed to be a true predator? You don't even have claws. Your teeth are flat. You have no natural weapons whatsoever. Yeah, well, humans got creative, I said, clutching my food tray like a shield. We invented weapons, tools, agriculture. We didn't need claws. That's not hunting, that's cheating. It's called evolution, buddy. Sorry we didn't do it to your specifications. The creche made a sound like a garbage disposal encountering a spoon and stalked off, muttering about how standards had fallen since the old days. But the real chaos started when Zeta Prime's news story went live across the galactic network. I was minding my own business in my quarters, trying to ignore the universe, when Professor Tame called me. Reece, turn on GNN. You're famous. I don't want to be famous. Too late. I turned on the news feed. There was my face, right next to a holographic recreation of various Earth predators. Wolves, bears, big cats, all of them prowling around my image like I was some kind of evolutionary mashup. Zeta Prime's voice narrated over the imagery. Breaking news tonight, as genetic scans reveal that humanity, long classified as harmless dormant predators, may in fact carry active DNA from some of Earth's most dangerous extinct species. The question everyone is asking, have humans been lying about their true nature? Oh, for crying out loud, I muttered. I didn't lie about anything. I didn't even know. The news story continued, showing interviews with various species. A Quellan biologist argued that humans should be reclassified immediately. A Felnari representative demanded humans be restricted to certain station sectors. A creche called the whole thing an insult to real predators. Then they showed an interview with Professor Tame, who looked absolutely delighted to be on camera. What we're seeing here is unprecedented, Tame said, his 6 legs practically bouncing with excitement. Humans don't just carry genetic markers from one apex predator. They carry markers from multiple predator species. Wolves, bears, various large cats. It's as if Earth's entire predator ecosystem was somehow consolidated into one species. Is that even possible? Zeta Prime asked. We didn't think so, but here we are. The implications are staggering. The newsfeed cut to footage of me in the interrogation room. Somehow they'd gotten security footage. I made a mental note to yell at someone about that later. As you can see, Zeta Prime continued, Reece Dalton appears completely ordinary. She shows no signs of aggression, no obvious predatory traits. This has led some to question whether the scanner made an error. The feed cut to an interview with Crix, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. The scanner did not make an error, Crix said, his purple skin now a pale lavender. I've run the diagnostics 17 times. The readings are accurate. She carries active genetic sequences from multiple extinct apex predators. All of them. My communicator exploded with messages. Some wanted interviews. Some wanted genetic samples. One wanted to know if I was single and interested in dating someone from a species I couldn't even pronounce. I ignored all of them except one from Professor Tame. Come to my lab immediately. I found something you need to see. The walk to Tem's lab took twice as long as normal because I had to navigate around various species having very different reactions to my presence. Some stared, some fled, some took pictures. One tried to sell me predator insurance, which apparently was a thing. When I finally reached the lab, Tem was waiting with what looked like enough scanning equipment to reverse engineer a starship. Reece, excellent. Come in, come in. Professor, this is getting out of hand, I said. There are species on this station that won't share an elevator with me now. Yes, unfortunate, but look at this. He pulled up a holographic display of my DNA. It looked like a very complicated ladder that had been twisted by someone with architectural ambitions. This, Tim said, pointing at various sections with 3 hands simultaneously, is your genetic code. And these highlighted sections are the predator markers. Now, what's fascinating is that these aren't dormant remnants. They're active. Your body is actively expressing these genes. In what way? I don't have claws or fangs or anything. No, but you have forward-facing eyes for depth perception, excellent pattern recognition for tracking prey, high endurance for persistence hunting, strategic thinking for coordinating group hunts. You have all the mental traits of an apex predator, even if you lack the physical ones. That's just normal human stuff. Exactly, Tem practically shouted. That's the point. What you consider normal human traits are actually predatory adaptations. Your entire species is optimized for hunting. You just express it in ways that seem harmless. I sat down heavily in a chair that wasn't designed for human anatomy. Okay, so what does this mean? It means, Tam said, his excitement dimming slightly, that the Galactic Council is going to want an explanation, and they're convening an emergency session tomorrow, with you as the main witness. Of course they are, I said, because my day wasn't bad enough already. Outside the lab window, I could see the station's main plaza. 3 different species were holding what looked like protests. One sign read, "Reclassify humans now." Another read, "Predator Rights Matter." A third just had a picture of my face with a question mark over it. Professor, I said quietly, what happens if they decide to reclassify humanity as Category 1 or Category 2? Tem's enthusiasm faltered. Then every human in Council space would face severe restrictions, travel limitations, monitoring requirements, possible deportation. It would be, to use a human phrase, very bad. Great, I muttered. No pressure then. Professor Tame's lab smelled like ozone and regret. Mostly the ozone, though. I need you to understand something, Tame said, arranging scanning equipment around me like I was about to get a very complicated haircut. The galaxy didn't evolve the way Earth did. Pretty sure every planet evolves differently, I said. That's kind of how evolution works. Yes, but Earth was an aberration. Tem pulled up a holographic display showing various planets. On most worlds, predator and prey species reached an equilibrium. Predators evolved to be efficient hunters, prey evolved better defenses, and they achieved a balance. Neither side won. They just coexisted. Okay, so what did Earth do? Earth decided balance was for quitters. Tem zoomed in on Earth's evolutionary timeline. Your planet experienced multiple mass extinction events, each one more catastrophic than the last. And every time, the surviving species had to evolve faster, adapt quicker, become more efficient at not dying. I watched the timeline display various extinct species: dinosaurs, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, cave bears, and dozens of others I didn't recognize. These were all apex predators, Tame continued. Every single one of them ruled their respective eras, and every single one went extinct, except one. Humans. Humans, Tame confirmed. Your species didn't just survive the extinction events. You outlasted every other apex predator on your planet. You filled their ecological niches. You essentially became them. Humans. I feel like you're building up to something concerning. I'm building up to epigenetics. Tam pulled up a new display, this one showing my DNA in excruciating detail. Epigenetics is the study of how your genes express themselves based on environmental factors. Your DNA doesn't change, but which genes are active or dormant can change based on what's happening around you, like turning genes on and off. Precisely. Now, most species have dormant genetic material from their evolutionary ancestors, little leftover bits of code that don't do anything anymore. But your DNA is different. Your predator genes aren't just dormant leftovers. They're active. Your body is actively using them. For what? I've never hunted anything in my life. I buy my food at the station commissary like everyone else. Tame practically vibrated with excitement. That's what's so fascinating. You're using predator genes for non-predator purposes. Watch this. He pulled up footage of me walking down a station corridor earlier that day. Then he started annotating it. See how your eyes constantly scan the environment? That's threat assessment, a predator behavior. You're unconsciously cataloging every person, every exit, every potential danger. That's just situational awareness, which is a predator trait. Now look here. He showed footage of me in the commissary. You chose a seat with your back to the wall, facing the entrance. Classic predator positioning. You can see threats coming, and nothing can approach from behind. That's just common sense. Common for predators. Prey species don't think like this. They cluster in groups, seek cover, rely on numbers for safety. You instinctively isolated yourself in a defensive position where you control sight lines. I watched the footage, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. Okay, so maybe I have some unconscious habits. It's not just habits. Tem was really getting wound up now. Your entire species thinks like predators. You solve problems through strategic planning. You work in coordinated groups with specialized roles. You're persistence hunters who don't give up until you've achieved your goal. These are all apex predator behaviors. Or they're just intelligence, I argued. Lots of species do these things. Not instinctively. Most species have to be taught strategic thinking. Humans do it naturally. Your children play games that simulate hunting, tag, hide and seek, strategy games. You're teaching predatory skills through play. He pulled up more data, this time showing human evolutionary history. Here's what I think happened, Tame said, his voice taking on a lecture tone. Humans didn't just outlast other predators through luck. You absorbed their evolutionary advantages. When the wolves went extinct, humans adopted pack hunting strategies and domesticated the survivors. When the big cats disappeared, humans became better at stealth and ambush tactics. You didn't just fill ecological niches. You took the best traits from every predator that went extinct and incorporated them into your own survival strategy. That's not how evolution works. You can't just steal traits from other species. No, but you can learn from them, adapt their strategies, make their survival techniques your own. And over millions of years, those learned behaviors become genetic memories, instincts. Your DNA carries the echoes of every apex predator Earth ever produced because humans were the ultimate survivors. You outlasted them all. I sat there processing this. Outside the lab window, I could see station security setting up barriers around the protest areas. This was getting worse by the hour. Professor, how does this help us convince the Council that humans aren't dangerous? Tame's enthusiasm dimmed. I'm not sure it does. Honestly, this data makes humans look more dangerous, not less. You're genetically programmed apex predators who've successfully hidden that fact by being friendly and approachable. From a certain perspective, that's terrifying. Great, just great. However, Tame said, pulling up one more display, there is something else. Something that might actually help. Do you know why most apex predators don't achieve space travel? Too busy hunting? Too specialized. Apex predators evolved to be perfect at one thing: hunting and killing prey. They don't need agriculture, complex tools, or social cooperation beyond pack dynamics. They're evolutionary dead ends, perfect killers that never advance beyond that. But humans did. Exactly. Humans evolved past pure predation. You developed empathy, cooperation, abstract thinking. You went from hunting mammoths to building starships. And that's the key point. You carry predator DNA, but you're not controlled by it. You're proof that apex predators can evolve beyond their programming. I thought about this. So we're predators who chose not to be predators. In a sense, yes. Which makes you unique in the galaxy, and possibly the most important thing to emphasize tomorrow at the council hearing. No pressure, though. Enormous pressure, actually, Thames said cheerfully. The fate of human galactic relations rests entirely on your testimony. Sleep well. I hate you a little bit right now. Everyone says that eventually, Thames replied. Now please hold still while I run one more scan. I want to document your stress response patterns. For science. The Galactic Council chamber looked like someone had designed a theater, a courtroom, and a zoo exhibit all at once, then given up halfway through and just stuck with whatever happened. 17 different species sat in a semicircular arrangement of seats, platforms, tanks, and in one case, a gravity-suspended bubble filled with methane. Each representative looked more concerned than the last. I stood in the center of the chamber, alone, feeling like I was about to defend a thesis I hadn't written on a subject I didn't understand. The council speaker was a Vaxian, a species that looked like someone had given a tree the ability to walk and make administrative decisions. His name was unpronounceable, so everyone just called him Speaker Root. This emergency session is now convened, Root announced, his voice creaking like old wood. We are here to address the matter of humanity's genetic classification. Reece Dalton, you will answer questions truthfully and completely. I'll do my best, I said. A Quellan representative raised 2 of his 4 hands. Preliminary question. Were humans aware of these genetic markers before the census scan? No, at least I wasn't, and I've never heard anyone mention it before. Convenient, muttered a creche representative, her tail swishing behind her. It's true, I protested. Humans don't exactly go around analyzing our own DNA for fun. We just live our lives. A Felnari representative, her 6 ears twitching nervously, spoke up. The scanner detected active genetic material from multiple extinct apex predators. Wolves, bears, large felines. How do you explain this? I glanced at Professor Thames, who was sitting in the observers section, all 6 of his legs crossed in what I assumed was an encouraging posture. According to the research Professor Thames conducted, I began, humans carry genetic echoes from extinct predators because we outlasted them. When they went extinct, humans filled their ecological roles. We adapted their survival strategies. Over millions of years, those adaptations became part of our genetic code. So you admit humans are predators, the creche representative said. I admit humans descended from predators. There's a difference. We carry the DNA, but we don't act on it the same way our ancestors did. Don't you? A gelatinous representative that looked like sentient pudding rippled in its container. Humans have been observed displaying classic predator behaviors. Strategic planning, group coordination, persistent pursuit of goals. These are hunting behaviors. Or they're just intelligence, I argued. Yes, humans think strategically. Yes, we work in groups. Yes, we don't give up easily. But we use those traits to build things, explore space, create art, not to hunt other sentient beings. But you could, the Felnari said quietly. That's what concerns us. You have all the genetic tools of apex predators. You simply choose not to use them for predation. But what happens when you change your mind? The chamber fell silent. That was the real question, wasn't it? Not what humans were, but what they could become. Can I ask you all a question? I said. Speaker Root's branches rustled. This is highly irregular. Yeah, well, this whole situation is irregular. Here's my question. How many of your species have ever had an apex predator achieve space travel? Various representatives looked at each other. No one answered. That's what I thought, I continued. Because apex predators don't usually evolve past hunting. They get really good at killing things, and then they stop evolving because they don't need to. They're already perfect at what they do. Your point? The Kresh asked. My point is, humans didn't stay predators. We could have. We had all the genetic advantages. We were the most successful hunters Earth ever produced. But instead of staying hunters, we became farmers. We domesticated animals instead of just hunting them. We built cities. We created art and music and literature. We developed empathy for other species. You also developed weapons, the pudding representative pointed out. Very effective weapons. Yeah, and we also created medicine, agriculture, and environmental protection. We drove species to extinction, then developed conservation programs to save them. We're predators who learn to feel guilty about being predators. Is that the behavior of a dangerous species? It's the behavior of a confusing species, Speaker Root said. Welcome to humanity, I replied. We confuse ourselves too. A small crystalline representative that hadn't spoken yet chimed in, their voice like wind through glass. What you describe is not evolution, it is choice. You carry predator genetics but choose not to express them through violence. This is what concerns some of us. Choice is variable. It can change. Sure, it can change. But here's the thing about humans. We don't just make individual choices. We make collective ones. Our entire civilization is built on the choice to cooperate instead of compete, to build instead of destroy. We're not perfect at it. We mess up constantly, but we keep trying. Pretty words, the Kresh said, but words don't change DNA. No, but behavior does. I looked around the chamber at all the different species. Each one evolved for their own survival. You want proof that humans have evolved past predation? Fine, let me prove it. How? Speaker Root asked. Challenge me. Any representative here, any physical challenge you want. If I'm truly an active apex predator, I should be able to outperform any of you in a hunt or fight or whatever. Go ahead, test me. The chamber erupted in discussion. Various representatives argued about whether this was appropriate, safe, or even legal. Finally, the Kresh representative stood. Very well, I accept your challenge. A simple test of endurance. No weapons, no tools, just raw physical capability. If you are truly a predator, you should be able to keep pace with me. What are the terms? I asked. A standard pursuit course. 5 kilometers through the station's maintenance levels. First one to reach the endpoint wins. And what does winning prove? The Kresh smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. If I win, it proves humans are not apex predators, just pretenders with delusions of competence. If you win, we will reconsider our position on your species classification. I looked at Professor Tame, who was frantically shaking his head no. I looked at Commander Vel, who was making a gesture that his translator couldn't interpret, but that I am pretty sure meant this is a terrible idea. I looked back at the Kresh representative, who was clearly expecting me to back down. You've got a deal, I said. The maintenance levels of Station Meridian 7 were not designed for racing. They were designed for robots and engineers who occasionally needed to fix things that broke in hard-to-reach places. Narrow corridors, low ceilings, random obstacles, and the persistent smell of recycled air that wasn't quite recycled enough. Perfect. The Kresh representative, who'd introduced herself as Hunter Designation Kresh 7 Alpha but said I could call her Kresh, stood at the starting line looking confident. She was 2 meters of pure muscle, with digitigrade legs built for sprinting and a tail that helped with balance. I was wearing cargo pants and a station-issue jumpsuit. I'd kicked off my boots because running in station-issue footwear was asking for blisters. Commander Vel stood between us, looking like he regretted every decision that had led to this moment. The course is 5 kilometers through the maintenance levels. First one to reach the checkpoint wins. No sabotage, no violence. This is a race, not a hunt. Understood? Understood, Kresh said. Yeah, got it, I replied. Begin on my mark, Vel said. His mandibles clicked 3 times. Mark! Kresh exploded forward. I mean that literally. She covered the first 50 meters in maybe 4 seconds, her claws gripping the deck plating with each powerful stride. I started jogging. Is she even trying? I heard someone ask from the observation drone following us. Here's the thing about persistence hunting that Professor Temi had explained. It's not about being fast, it's about being relentless. Kresh disappeared around a corner ahead. I kept jogging at a steady pace. The first kilometer was straightforward. Kresh maintained her lead, sprinting through corridors, leaping over obstacles, using her natural agility to navigate the tight spaces. I followed at my steady jog, not trying to catch up, just keeping her in sight. By the second kilometer, I started noticing something. Kresh was slowing down. Not much, but enough that the gap between us wasn't growing anymore. By the third kilometer, she was definitely slower. Her sprints were shorter, her rest periods longer. I maintained my pace. Same speed, same rhythm. Just running. That's when I heard her breathing change. Kresh were ambush predators, built for explosive speed and short bursts. They weren't designed for endurance. Humans apparently were. "How are you still running?" Kresh gasped as I closed the distance. We were in a straight corridor and she'd slowed to what was barely a jog for her species. "Practice," I said, not even breathing hard. "Humans used to hunt by just following prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. It's kind of our thing." "That's horrifying." "Yeah, I'm getting that a lot lately." By the fourth kilometer, I'd caught up to her. We ran side by side for maybe 30 seconds. Then I pulled ahead. "This isn't possible," Kresh panted. "You don't have the physiology for this." "I have the genetics for it, though," I replied. "Turns out, all those extinct predators you guys were worried about, they were mostly ambush hunters. But humans, we're pursuit predators. We don't need to be fast. We just need to be persistent." Kresh tried to sprint again, pushing herself harder. It lasted maybe 10 seconds before she slowed to a stumbling jog, her breathing ragged and labored. I maintained my pace, one foot in front of the other, the rhythm I'd kept since the start. "You're not even tired?" she wheezed. "Oh, I'm tired," I admitted. "But I can keep going for a while yet. Humans have these really efficient cooling systems. We sweat, and our legs are built for this. Big glutes, spring-loaded tendons in our feet. We're literally engineered for running long distances." The fifth kilometer stretched ahead. Kresh was walking now, one hand braced against the wall, her chest heaving. I jogged past her. "The hell with your species," she managed. "We're persistent," I called back. "It's our whole deal." I crossed the checkpoint alone. Commander Vel was waiting there with a medical team and several observers from different species. They all stared at me like I'd just sprouted wings. "That was..." Vel's translator struggled. "Unprecedented." "That was a light jog," I said, bending to catch my breath. I was tired, sure, but I could have kept going if I needed to. 5 kilometers isn't even that far for a human. Kresh stumbled across the checkpoint 3 minutes later and immediately collapsed. The medical team rushed to her. She waved them off irritably. "I'm fine," she growled. "Just defeated by a species that looks like it should fall apart in a stiff breeze." She looked at me with something between respect and horror. "You really used to hunt things this way?" "For thousands of years," I confirmed. "Before we invented projectile weapons, we'd just follow animals until they physically couldn't run anymore. Then we'd walk up and kill them." "That's the most terrifying thing I've ever heard, right?" said Commander Vel. And I told them humans were harmless. The observer from the Galactic Council stepped forward. She was a meridian, tall and crystalline, with a voice like wind chimes. "This changes the classification assessment significantly. Humans demonstrate pursuit predator characteristics that exceed any known species in the current galaxy." "So what does that mean for us?" I asked. "It means," she said slowly, "that the Council needs to reconsider what dangerous actually means. You're not dangerous because you're aggressive. You're dangerous because you don't stop." Kresh had recovered enough to stand. She approached me and extended her clawed hand. I shook it carefully. "Your species is terrifying," she said, "but you have honor. You could have humiliated me. You just ran." "I don't like fighting," I said honestly, "but I'm really good at not giving up." "We noticed," Vel said dryly. "The Kresh delegation has already withdrawn their objection to human station access. Apparently, they don't want to fight a species that hunts like a slow-moving nightmare. That's actually a compliment in our language, Kresh added. Roughly translated, it means, worthy adversary who will definitely kill you if you're dumb enough to make them try. I'll take it, I said. The Meridian Observer made a note on her datapad. I'll be recommending full integration status for humanity. Any species that can turn a simple foot race into an existential horror demonstration deserves respect. Great, I said. Can I get some water now and maybe sit down? Like I said, I'm actually pretty tired. You just ran 5 kilometers through maintenance tunnels and you're only pretty tired? Vel's translator added a note of disbelief. Yeah, well, I shrugged. I'm only human. The Meridian Observer made another note. I'm adding that phrase to the file. I suspect it's going to become relevant to council discussions for years to come. She wasn't wrong. 3 days later, the council's decision came through official channels. Humanity was granted full integration status with a special notation in our file. Exercise extreme caution. Humans are pursuit predators. Do not run from them. They will follow. Professor Tame called it the most successful diplomatic intervention in council history, achieved through jogging. Commander Vel just looked exhausted every time he saw me, like I'd personally aged him a decade in less than a week. The Kresh delegation sent me a gift before they left. A ceremonial hunting knife with an inscription that translated to the human who taught us what fear tastes like with respect. And as for me, I went back to my quarters, ordered a pizza. Station food synthesizers had finally figured out cheese, and thought about how weird my life had become. 1 week ago, I was worried about whether humans would be accepted in the galaxy. Now I was the reason half the council was having nightmares about being slowly chased through corridors by a barefoot human in cargo pants. I took a bite of my pizza and smiled. Yeah, I could live with that.